We've seen the stories of the pro-Trump election officials gearing up to refuse to certify or delay the certification of results this year should Trump lose. As such, the certification process has become one of the major concerns of voters as we head into this November election. But what actually is election certification, and what happens if officials refuse to certify the results? Simply put, election certification is the process by which election officials affirm that the tabulation and canvassing of votes is complete and that the results are accurate. By all accounts, it is somewhat of a mundane, statutory task. After tabulating all ballots, in-person, mail-in, absentee, provisional, local election officials certify that the ballot count is complete and accurate. That process is then repeated by election officials on the state level and, in the case of a presidential election, in Congress. It's the final step in the election process that formally declares the results of the races. As Mark Elias says, the election certifiers are the scoreboard operators of the election.
If you're on that certification board, your one job are to take the results from the precincts, put them onto a document. Okay, make sure that there are no uncounted ballots like provisional ballots, that those get added into the total, that there's no, that if people have cured ballots, those get added into the total. And then you add up the numbers. If we came up with a system today, you know what we would call the certifiers of election? Microsoft Excel, right? This is an old process where people did this hand math, and it became part of the pageantry of our democracy. People congratulated themselves across the aisle on a job well done. Their job is not to be players on the field. Their job is to be the scoreboard operator. Someone scores and they put it up on the scoreboard. but they are trying to weaponize that to give Republicans an advantage.
Election administration in the US is highly decentralized. Each state has different rules for how election administration is handled at the county, city, or town level, and whether that is run by a board, some individual, or a combination of the two. You've probably seen the recent Rolling Stones investigation that found that there are at least 70 election officials in key swing states with a history of promoting conspiracy theories related to the 2020 election, igniting concerns that such officials would refuse to certify the election results in their jurisdiction should they not be happy with whichever candidate actually wins. During the 2020 and 2022 elections, we saw rogue election officials delaying certification or outright refusing to certify an election in Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and other states. The problem with officials refusing to certify on a local level, among many other things, is that it causes a domino effect. If even just one town or county refuses to certify, it can hold up the statewide certification of results, which can then delay certification of federal offices like president. But here's the good news. There are mechanisms in place to ensure that elections eventually do get certified. Some states have specific statutes already in place for a process to follow if an election official refuses to certify. In other states, the court can step in at the request of a voter, a candidate, or some other state official. The court would then issue what's called a writ of mandamus to compel the election official to certify the results. And if an election official refuses to comply with a court order to certify an election, they could end up being removed from their position. For example, 2 officials in Surrey County, North Carolina, refused to certify their county's 2022 midterm election results due to unfounded claims of voter fraud. After already delaying certification, one of the officials ended up voting to certify while the other one outright refused to do so. Thankfully, the county's results were still able to be certified without his vote. But in March 2023, the State Board of Elections removed both of them from their positions after they found that them refusing to certify or delaying certification violated state law. And in Cochise County, Arizona, 2 election officials who refused to certify their county's 2022 midterm results until they were sued multiple times are now facing multiple felony charges for their actions.
If you don't certify Cochise County, how do you certify the Senate election in 2022? How do you certify the governor's election, the AG election, the Secretary of State election? All elections, by the way, won by Democrats, which may tell you some reason why Cochise County didn't want to certify. They got sued by my law firm and they lost. And then they got indicted by the state because they failed to do their minimum duty. And, my law firm, we had to sue a county in Pennsylvania. And we saw these efforts to refuse to certify around the country. And so That is what Republicans, I think, are planning for 2024. That is what the same outcome will be in 2024 that we saw in 2020 and 2022 if they try it. But, look, it's not to be taken lightly because it does have a disruptive effect on people's confidence in the outcomes, and it can delay things.
For a presidential election, it gets a bit more complicated because of the Electoral College. After states certify their statewide results, they appoint electors to represent whoever won the popular vote in that state. Maine and Nebraska are the two exceptions to this, where they divide their electoral votes by congressional district. These electors meet in their respective states and send what is called a certificate of ascertainment to officially cast their votes for president and vice president. And finally, on January 6th, Congress holds a joint session to count and certify the electoral college votes for president and vice president, a ceremonial task that marks the completion of a presidential election. We saw Trump and his allies exploit this process and incite a violent mob at the U.S. Capitol in 2021 to disrupt this process. Insurrectionists called for violence against then Vice President Mike Pence since he was the presiding officer for the certification of the results, and Pence refused to defy his constitutional duties to certify the accurate Electoral College results. Since 2021, Congress has passed the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act to help secure some of these vulnerabilities in the certification process to prevent another January 6th from happening.
After January 6, 2021, Congress took the minimum steps necessary to protect part of the certification process. They enacted the Electoral Count Reform Act, which changes the way in which the certification process is treated as it goes to Congress. So it essentially safeguards and strengthens the counting and certification process. It makes clear that the vice president doesn't have discretion. It raises the threshold for Congress to reject state election results. It strengthens the process at the state level.
So what can we expect to happen during this year's crucial presidential election? Mark Elias has warned that on the local level, we are going to see mass refusals to certify elections because Republicans are counting on the fact that if they don't certify in several small counties, you cannot certify these statewide results. During the 2022 midterms, like I mentioned, officials in Cochise County, Arizona, refused to certify their results by the state's mandated deadline due to baseless conspiracy theories about the voting machines that were being used to tabulate the results. These claims followed attempts by the county to illegally hand count their ballots. In Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, the board deadlocked after 2 members refused to certify and 1 abstained from voting. The abstaining member said he wanted to see what would happen if the vote wasn't certified. Both counties got sued and were forced to certify, but it offers a look into what we might be dealing with this year. We're already seeing Republicans preparing to fight certification. In Georgia, the Republican-controlled state election board has already passed multiple rules that will make it easier for election officials to refuse to certify on time. Trump has even personally praised these 3 members by name who voted to pass these rules at a rally earlier this month.
I don't know if you've heard, but the Georgia State Election Board is in a very positive way. This is a very positive thing, Marjorie. They're on fire. They're doing a great job. 3 members, Janice Johnson, Rick Jeffries, and Janelle King. 3 people are all pit bulls fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory. They're fighting.
And in Georgia's most populous county, a Republican member of the Fulton County Board of Elections who refused to certify the county's May 2024 primary filed a lawsuit asking the court to rule that election officials have the legal right to refuse to certify elections. And these efforts are only expected to ramp up as we get closer to November. But as mentioned, voters can rest assured that just as in 2020 and 2022, the legal mechanisms that are in place will ensure that in the end, accurate results will be certified. Democracy Docket will continue to track and report about all of these certification issues as we head into this election and post-election season. So please make sure you're signed up. Please make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date on it all. You can click the link right here or in the description of this video to sign up right now. I'm Sophie, and I'll see you next time.